Coming to you live from my treadmill as I used to do every month, but unfortunately I had to take a hiatus to finish my new book, How Not to Age, but it is done. So I'm back to doing monthly Q&As. I apologize about that. The book was 6 months overdue. In terms of missing my deadline, and I don't know, we're at about 11,000 citations, 1,000 pages. Publisher won't publish it that big, so we got to squish it down. Months of fact checking, months of editing to get it down to a more digestible chunk. But we will do that, and it will be on bookshelves in December 2023. I know that's a long way away, but it's going to be worth the wait. I'm excited about it. So, for those of you unfamiliar with my work, every year I read through every issue of every English language nutrition journal in the world. So busy folks like you don't have to. Then I compile the most interesting, most groundbreaking, most practical findings and new videos and articles upload nearly every day to my nonprofit site, NutritionFacts.org. Everything on the website is free. There's no ads, no corporate sponsorship, strictly non-commercial, not selling anything. Just putting up, doing it as a labor of love, as a tribute to my grandmother, whose own life was saved with evidence-based nutrition. All right, let's take everyone's questions here and see how many we get through. All right. First one here is, what do I do for psoriasis? Plant-based diet made it a little better. But still struggling. What do I have for psoriasis? Unfortunately, it was not covered in my new book. Everything in my brain right now. I can talk about wrinkles. I can talk about effects of aging on the skin. Let me see what I presume you looked at psoriasis. I presume you looked at Nutrition Facts that we had. So I do have a video on aloe vera for psoriasis. I'm not saying it worked. I'm just saying I got a video. Sodium and autoimmune diseases. I don't know if you remember those helper T17 cells and the effects of sodium. What else we got? Potassium and autoimmune diseases. Talk about psoriasis. I wish I could remember what those videos said. Check out NutritionFacts.org. Just type in psoriasis. It'll all pop up. But thank you for reminding me to, in the next batch of Nutrition Facts videos, look up and see what the latest on treating psoriasis is. All right, let's see what's next. Okay. Next question is it bad to eat a lot of fruit in banana ice cream in one meal? 5 bananas, frozen berries, and a date sounds delicious. Go crazy. Inadequate fruit consumption is one of the leading killers on planet Earth. I think it's number 3, if I remember from the Global Burden of Disease study. So diet is number 1 killer of humanity. And the 5 worst things about our diet. Number 1, I believe, is too much sodium consumption. Number 1, dietary risk factor for death. Number 2, inadequate whole grain consumption. I believe number 3 is inadequate fruit consumption. So the more fruit, the better. In fact, better. In fact, you may indeed have got my entire daily dozen of fruit recommendations in my Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen free app, iPhone, Android. You nailed it in one single dessert. All right, who's next? A multiple myeloma patient on a bunch of drugs. Is there any for blood thinners? I need a blood thinners on a whole food plant-based diet. Let me, since this is such a specific question, thank you, Nona, for asking it. Why don't you contact me directly? If you go to NutritionFacts.org, there's a contact page, and I will take your question offline. Just because the lack of kind of general extrapolability to other folks. But thank you so much for asking your questions, and I will definitely answer it. Okay, let's next here. What is your opinion on fasting? Oh, and how many hours per day should one fast? So fasting actually was the largest chapter in How Not to Diet. My 2 books ago, before How to Survive a Pandemic, actually before, and I had a cookbook in there too. But my second to last major academic book, How Not to Diet. I talk about intermediate fasting, water only fasting, alternate day fasting, 25-5, 5-2, fasting mimicking diets, you name it. So it's all there. Go to your local public library and pull it down. And it sounds like you're talking about time restricted feeding, which is narrowing one's eating window to 12 hours or less. And the most important thing about that is the timing. So it's interesting. Time restricted feeding studies are all over the place. Some show it's good for you, some show it's bad for you. And if you take a step back and really look at it, so it's very confusing literature, but then you take a step back, aha, it depends on whether it's early or late. So the late time restricted feeding was metabolically bad, early was good. And so basically, if anything, you want to skip supper, not breakfast. You want to shift your caloric intake towards the morning. And I talk about the benefits of doing that from kind of a circadian biology standpoint, in terms of blood sugars, in terms of all sorts of stuff. And then recommend not eating after 7 p.m. when it's dark out. Anyway, check out in How Not to Diet, time restricted feeding. That's actually something that I've incorporated in my life from that book. Every time I write a book, I change my life, change my family's life in terms of what we do day to day, because new science comes out, or old science that I never knew about that I just learned about comes out. Anyway, all right. What else do we have? Giuseppe says thank you. Oh, that's very sweet. Next up, Arnold says hello. Hello to Arnold. Next up, we got multiple myeloma. That's good. Let me see. Actual question. Okay, here we go. Matt Donalds says, what would I recommend about low sodium on the whole food plant-based diet? What would you recommend? I would recommend to eat a low sodium whole food plant-based diet, which by definition is low sodium, because where is sodium found? 70% of sodium is not salt shaker in the kitchen or the dinner table. It's processed food. So if you're eating whole foods and you're not eating processed foods, that's 70% of your sodium right there. Encourage people to meet the American Heart Association's recommendation for a max of 1,500 milligrams of sodium a day, which is almost impossible to do if you eat processed foods or add salt to your foods, but easy to do if you're eating a whole food plant-based diet. So yeah, as I said, the number one dietary risk factor for death on the planet, too much sodium. Why? Because it increases not only your blood pressure, but can put your kidneys at risk and on up and down. Autoimmune disease, as I mentioned before. All right. So, So what do I recommend? I recommend doing it. I don't know if that's exactly what you were asking about. All right. Next question. Now that I can't pick anymore because they're going up so quick. Excessive sweating. Sharon said excessive sweating in 40-year-old man with no known underlying conditions. I wonder if it's excessive hand sweating or sweating all over. What's a good differential diagnosis for hyperhidrosis? Let's see what comes up. What's all sorts of things. Etiology here. Primary, secondary. There's some genetic factors, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, on a febrile illness, I assume it's not just when they have a fever. Oh, affects approximately 3% of the U.S. population. All right. And so, what do you want to know? All right. So, ruling out kidney dysfunction, malignancy, diabetes, thyroid disease, inflammatory disorders, or connective tissue disorders, which can all cause it. And so there's a bunch of lab tests that I would encourage you, that 40-year-old to get. And then there's lots of things we can do to treat and manage the symptoms, but better to treat the cause as usual. Okay, next up, are there from Sage? That's a delicious herb. Are there any serious rare diseases where animal consumption is mandatory? Well, kinda. So I talk about a video of so there's components of was it a creatine video? No, was it a carnitine video? So one in, I forget, like 40,000 births, something. It's on the order of 10 to the 5th. Are born with the inability, I believe it was, I'd have to check. I believe it was, so I did a video about this on carnitine synthesis. So, for example, carnitine is necessary, but your body makes all that you need, just like, but if you can't, if you have a congenital defect that interferes with that, then you have to get it from another animal that actually does make it. So you can eat animals, or you can just take it in a supplement. So I think it was there's an Israeli kid that I talked about case report, and so they just started taking carnitine supplements, and then they're fine. So technically, in a pre-supplement era, they would have had to have animal products. Of course, they'd have to have that for vitamin B12, but now, of course, that is not necessary. So is there any circumstance? I don't think there's any circumstance in which it's mandatory. There's nothing that you couldn't get from a non-animal source that I can think of, although maybe there's some weird enzyme deficiency somewhere, but I don't know why you couldn't just take the product. So not that I know of is the answer to that. Next question comes from Maynard Spaceship. Looks like they're just answering somebody else's question. Nona, says, is it okay to eat ginger every day? Yes. Should you peel it? It's up to you. We're less concerned about roots that are the peel of roots rather than the peel of fruits. Peel of fruits are exposed to oxygen and have to be packed with antioxidants. That's why you don't want to peel your apples or something. But there's not much nutrition in, potato peel, for example. So, or ginger peel for that matter. So if you like it peeled, peel it. I don't peel it just because it's quicker that way. I just grate it whole, but totally up to you. Why does it make you nasal? I don't know what you mean by nasal. Like nose run? It's kind of spicy. Not sure what you mean by that, but yes, is it okay to eat ginger every day? Absolutely. All right, who's next? This is Brad saying, what are my thoughts on the best sweetener? Oh, I just did a webinar on this. And so the best sweeteners, there are green light sweeteners. These are whole plant foods. So, for example, dates and sweet potatoes. And anyway, you can incorporate whole foods. So, sweeten your cereal with fruit. Whether dried berries or fresh berries or frozen berries or, that kind of thing. So that would really be the best sweetener. And then I talk about the pros and cons of things like monk fruit and stevia and Splenda and aspartame, etc. Just did a webinar based on a series of new videos coming out where I talk about additional sweeteners such as rare sugars like allulose and more data on erythritol. Those are some of the less harmful sweeteners, but encourage whole plant foods where you actually get a little nutrition with your sweetness. What a concept. Speaking of webinars, let me whip this out before I forget. I've got a yoga webinar coming up. Not doing yoga, but yoga put to the test. If you go to NutritionFacts.org/webinars, you will see, I forget when the registration date is up. But it's coming soon. So if you're interested, you should definitely check it out. Basically, yoga's been put to the test for, here's the list: multiple sclerosis, back pain, neck pain, insomnia, breast cancer, depression, anxiety, urinary incontinence, headaches, diabetes, osteoarthritis, irritable bowel, inflammatory bowel, hot flashes, and osteoporosis. And I'm going to be talking about yoga for all those. Does it work? Does it work better than regular exercise? Does it not work better than compared to nothing? Are there contraindications? Some people that shouldn't do yoga. Which of the 50 different styles of yoga are best? I'm going to go through all that. 90-minute live webinar, September 9th, 2 p.m. Eastern time. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to do like Zoom polling where it's like a little game show format. We'll see before we run the video what people thought, and then we'll compare the results and see who's smarter than everybody else. Believe me, you will not know beforehand. I certainly didn't. I was surprised all the way through. I'm sure the webinar is going to upset everybody. People that hate yoga are going to be upset about all the benefits. People that love yoga are going to be upset about all the downsides and the times it doesn't work. Anyway, check it out. Coming up. Okay, let's go back to your questions. Okay. Random question from Joseph. Which nutritional resources most trustworthy for pregnant women? Are there whole food plan? Oh, fantastic question. Okay. There is a fantastic book co-written between a pediatrician and Brenda Davis that just came out. I believe it's called Nourish. Let me check that out. Make sure. Nourish. Brenda Davis. Yes, Nourish, the definitive plant-based nutrition guide for families. It came out in 2020. Dr. Shaw and Brenda Davis. Anything Brenda touches turns to gold. So I think my previous resource would be something before that she wrote about it, but that's what I would refer you to in terms of raising healthy families. And then in terms of whole food plant-based foods, yes. So for example, caution against anti-inflammatory foods in the third trimester. So going out of your way to include super anti-inflammatory foods like chamomile tea might not be a good idea because there are inflammatory compounds that keep the ductus arteriosus, the way fetuses breathe, open. Obviously the fetal lungs are filled with fluid, and so wait a second, how does the oxygen-rich blood from the umbilical cord go throughout the body? If the heart has to pump through the lungs, well, it doesn't, because there's actually a pathway before you're born, and your first breath, it closes up. It's kept open with inflammatory compounds. And so people taking aspirin or something in the third trimester, anti-inflammatory drugs, increases the risk of premature closure, and then which is an emergency situation. And so this is very rare, even the cases with like drug-induced, like 1 in 10,000 pregnancies, but better safe than sorry. So things like cocoa, super anti-inflammatory foods, anthocyanin-rich berries. So there's case reports of chamomile tea. There's a case report of some acai berry drink, case report of some like violet fruits drink. Again, very rare, but better safe than sorry. Next up. I don't know why it's not going. Here we go. This is from Liquid Spin. Does the act of cooking tofu or eggs destroy some of the protein complex? Not sure what I mean by complex. Does it destroy it? Not sure what you mean. You should cook tofu from a food safety standpoint, and certainly cook eggs from a food safety standpoint. But the protein is present either way. I would encourage people to use, when cooking tofu, to use moist methods such as steaming or boiling, rather than blackening, something like grilling or something, just because of the AGEs, the advanced glycation end products that are produced when high-fat, high-protein foods are exposed to high, dry heat. That's why I encourage people not to roast their nuts and seeds, and is a reason why we should avoid kind of broiled and baked animal products, etc. All right, next up. Could I look into a rosacea cure? Rosacea, I don't think I have a single video. I apologize about that. I will add it to my list of to look into. Sometimes I have looked into things. There's just nothing out there. And so there's no point in doing a video saying I looked and there's nothing you can do about it. But I'm not saying that for rosacea. I'm just saying that's one of the reasons why some disease conditions don't get much play on NutritionFacts.org. So I want to find things that are practical, meaning I want someone to be able to watch a video and something they can actually do about it, rather than just kind of being informational. But so I will check out and see what's the latest on rosacea. All right, Peter asks, please come out to vegan camp in the UK. I know they've been inviting me for a long time, but haven't made it out. Maybe one of these days. Next up is Peter again. What do I think? Do you think people need a fourth vaccination for COVID? So this is assuming that they had a 2-dose schedule and one booster. Should they get another booster? In fact, we should have some data. I know Moderna is looking at emergency authorization for boosters with some new variants. I will be first in line. I haven't yet because I haven't turned 50, so I'm actually wasn't kind of included in that second booster round. But presumably I will be when the next boosters come out, presuming that the data is good, but it certainly has been good for the previous rounds. All right, who else do we have? We have NW Backcountry. Oh, talking to somebody else. We have Alex who says, what nootropics? I think that's a naturopath term. Nootropics. What is it? It is a smart drug, a wide range of natural synthetic supplements that have claimed to improve cognitive function. Okay. Well, there's a whole bunch. So in the new in How Not to Age upcoming book, be out a little over a year. The biggest chapter is on preserving your mind, not only talking about dementia, but in terms of maintaining cognition. So I talk about ginkgo, I talk about ginseng. In terms of whether any of this is good, I'd have to actually pull it up. Let me see. Here, let me pull it up really quick and get you some. This is a sneak peek. Let's do it. Oh, I can't spell ginkgo. That's my problem. Ginkgo. Okay. All right. So yeah, let's find out about ginkgo biloba. It turns out that in terms of brain health supplements, which sounds like this question is about, the single most common ingredient was ginkgo biloba. It looks like 2% of Americans are taking the stuff. It's a pretty tree with fan-shaped leaves, blah, blah, blah. I talk about that. Okay, one of the most widely used herbal treatments for dementia. And there's been, 3 dozen randomized controlled trials involving more than 4,000 people. That's amazing. And they found that the evidence that there's predictable or clinically significant benefit is inconsistent and unreliable. Oh, well, that's a bummer. All right. Okay, so to put the subject to rest for once and for all, 2 large randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trials were conducted, one in Europe, funded by a ginkgo supplement company, and the longest one to date, the GEM study, Ginkgo Evaluation of Memory, funded by the NIH here in the United States, publicly funded. That's nice. More than 5,000 women, with either men and women with either normal or mild cognitive impairment, normal cognition, randomized to ginkgo or placebo 5 or 6 years. Amazing to see if we can prevent them from getting dementia. And neither trial demonstrated any preventive effect. Gosh darn it. However, those already with dementia, ginkgo do appear to slow cognitive decline compared to placebo for those with Alzheimer's or dementia in general. That's nice. But then I talk about, but is there actually ginkgo in your ginkgo supplements? When they've actually looked at, take them off of store shelves, only 1 in 6 ginkgo supplements had no detectable ginkgo DNA at all. So that sucks. I talk about the downsides. There's a number of side effects, including bleeding associated with ginkgo. And so, you want to stop taking it 2 weeks before surgery. Anyway, all right, there's your sneak peek at least one supplement used for cognitive enhancement and lots more. And I cover all of them, actually. Okay, but I want to get to some other questions. Okay, Jessica, how concerned should we be about the heavy metals in cocoa powder? So I think chromium is really the only one that I've run across in any. I know Consumers Lab did a nice. They're a for-profit company. I wish they were a nonprofit, but they do. To their credit, they certainly they do surveys of various supplements. They did a cocoa, and they found some which were higher than they would like. And I'm sure it's behind a paywall. But I would tell you what they found if I remembered it. But I'm sure I must have done a video about it. So it may be in the video, or you can check out the survey that they did. So I eat cocoa powder every day. I'm not worried about it, although I may have chosen my cocoa powder based on heavy metal levels. And I believe when I say heavy metal levels, it was chromium and specifically. Okay, is ferritin level too low? Oh, I have a whole video on that. So, fascinating. So you can randomize people to give blood or not. They were trying to, because iron, there's some ferrotoxic diseases. So if I remember correctly, again, this Nutrition Facts video, they were trying to prevent heart disease by because high iron levels can have a pro-oxidant effect. And so they randomized people to get blood donations or not to lower their iron levels. And what happened instead, I don't think it helped with heart disease, but all of a sudden there's a dramatic drop in cancer, if I remember correctly. And it happened really quick too. It's really remarkable. And so we should donate blood and keep our ferritin levels low. And I talk about what is the ideal kind of, ferritin is the kind of a proxy for your storage levels. And so ideally we want to have enough iron to obviously make enough blood cells so we're not anemic, but have low storage levels. And I forget exactly the target ferritin, but it's definitely online. You can check it out at NutritionFacts.org. All right, next up, don't worry, be happy, has the same question. Kin has the question, can't stomach daily flax seeds. I just hate the gloop. Is a flax oil supplement a good idea? No. The reason we do flax primarily is for the lignans, which are not found in flax oil. And when they say high lignan flax oil supplement, that is total bull BS. If you look at the ingredients, all it is flaxseed oil with some ground flax seeds added to it. That's what lignans are. So just eat the ground flax seeds, and you'll get all the lignans with these anti-cancer compounds. So it sounds like it's really a texture issue. So there's all sorts of things, the ways you can add it to foods where you don't have to worry about gloopiness, right? Trying to think, I don't really have gloopy problems. Are you making it I guess in smoothies, it can make it thick, so you drink it really quick. If you let it sit for a while, it can kind of gel up. I just sprinkle it on foods with wheat germ. I'm actually adding wheat germ to my diet now. That's because of the new book. Why? Because of spermidine, a longevity compound. Long story, but I now mix wheat germ with my ground flax seeds and will encourage everybody to do that. More info on that to come. And benefit of wheat germ, no gloopiness. All right, this is acting Mac. Says, what precautions need to be taken for continuing a whole food plant-based diet after gastric sleeve surgery? Oh, interesting. Well, I did have that one study, one case report about the poor woman who busted open her surgical wound eating broccoli and inadequately chewing broccoli. The precautions would be, these high fiber foods, like some of the healthiest foods, like, broccoli and greens, which you just have to chew really well. And so before, you get away with swallowing big chunks, I guess. Maybe, feel a little lumpy in your esophagus or something, but you can't do that when you have, this, a golf ball sized stomach with Roux-en-Y surgery or a gastric sleeve. You just have a narrow slice. So chew really well. And you say, well, why is that particularly a whole food plant-based diet thing? Well, if you think about it, most processed foods are designed for speed of consumption. So like white bread and things where it's all very soft. You don't have to chew a lot. They want you to consume really quickly. Whereas whole food plant-based diet, you actually have to chew. And so it's even more important to chew if you don't have a lot of stomach capacity. Oh my God, I'm running out of time. Let me just say one more announcement, and that is drgregor.org has our 20% off summer sale, which you do every year for mugs. I don't have my mug with me, but mugs and shirts and hats and aprons and all sorts of cool Nutrition Facts swag. And of course, all money from all the sales all goes to supporting Nutrition Facts. So we appreciate it. So check it out. Got the yoga webinar coming up, and see you everybody next month. Have a great month.